So, this is a reply to Lizzard944. Congratulations, you've gotten your own video. And how it works when I reply to somebody in video form is, this is your video. I will not reply to you anymore in any other form. This is it. I'm moving on from the conversation. But feel free to leave as many comments and replies on this video, your video, as you wish. And quintessentially, I would wish that I could use this conversation in my Advice to Parents series as an example of what to do, because in my Advice to Parents series, Advice to Parents of LGBT Youth, I do have an example of what not to do if your child happens to be lesbian, gay, bisexual, or transgendered LGBT. So, Lizzard and I got into a conversation on the Young Turks video, German Dad Helps Son by Wearing a Skirt. And basically, in this article, there is a father in Germany whose 5-year-old male child, likes to wear skirts and dresses. And apparently this young child was getting made fun of, so his dad, assumably his, dad came out and started wearing skirts and dresses to support his kid, which I think is so awesome. It's like, you want a supportive parent? There you go. And basically what this really speaks of is that whether this child is transgendered or this child is cisexual meaning non-transgendered, and the term cisexual itself was coined somewhere in the 90s, which makes sense, you know, as we grow in our understanding of different just things that we're starting to learn about. It's only natural that we get language for it, and that we develop language for it. I mean, our understanding of what it is to be transgendered has only really started expanding within the last 2.5 decades or so. So, if this child happens to be cisexual, non-transgendered, and going through a phase, well then, you know, that's pretty cool. Or if this child happens to be transgendered and just is transgendered, well, you know, that's totally awesome. But what is even more awesome, just as I commented on the Young Turks video, is that this dad and his partner, assumably his wife, are being so supportive of their child. I mean, if I wasn't making this reply to Lizzard, I would be putting this video up as an example of what to do right as a parent of an LGBT, a lesbian, gay, bisexual, or transgendered youth. Because I put up an example of what not to do a couple of weeks ago onto my Advice to Parents of LGBT Youth series. But basically, here's the conversation back and forth between Lizzard and I. I commented, "Aw, get that dad a kilt and give that little possibly transgendered baby a hug." You know, because it's so awesome that this dad is being so supportive of his child. And Lizzard commented back, it's not transgendered, but rather gender spoiled. This kid needs a couple of good ass whoopings to straighten up his act. So, number one, Lizzard, you are encouraging somebody to physically harm their child? You are encouraging violence upon a child? Which, by the way, beating children has only been shown to cause more violence. Just kind of as a sidebar. But anyway, to assumably his comment, I replied, This kid has loving and supportive parents who are open to the wide spectrum of gender. It could be that this kid is cisexual and in a phase, or it could be that this kid is transgender, but either way, his parents are being amazing in their openness and support of their child's gender expression. Gender is expressed in many different ways in many different cultures. Who is to say what a real man does, like wear a kilt or picking crops? gender is just an expression, and yeah, it's a very important gender. One facet of gender is an expression. But either way, this child is growing up in a very loving and supportive environment. And by the way, I think it's worth stating that to that reply, I got three thumbs up. And Lizzard replies, quotation, cissexual, question mark, is there a new psychological disorder out there? To this I replied, cissexual is the academical term for non-transgendered. Lizzard to that replied, thanks for the definition. It's hard to keep up with the multitude of new labels to cover every flaky personality. Google says cissexual is a relatively new term coined in the 1990s by some con artist psychologist who needed to invent a new client base. This kid needs the letter of the law read to him, that he can play make-believe at home, but that's where this nonsense should end. Despite homosexuals charging in trying to recruit kids, 5-year-olds know nothing about sexuality. To this I replied, well, basically, yeah, you know what, I fully admit I kind of did take a shot below the belt and did the whole, yeah, people who tend to be homophobic do actually tend to be gay themselves, which actually there is academic studies about that, whereas the reverse is not so true, because very few people, when they're going through their coming out process, will not take that time to really consider, very few people will not take that time to really think out their sexual orientation, their desires, their wants, their feelings, their needs, and not try and get that satisfied through members of the opposite sex. Especially in the world that I live in the world that a lot of people live in, where homosexuality is not really as accepted. I mean, my coming out process was rough, and yet I used to be homophobic, but mostly because I was scared. I was scared of what people would think. I was scared my parents might kick me out for crying out loud. Thankfully they didn't, but that's kind of a sidebar. The thing is that, okay, Lizzard, you know what? That was a shot below the belt, and I'm sorry for taking that shot below the belt. But this child, this 5-year-old kid whose dad is wearing dresses and skirts and whatnot and supporting him, is showing this child the kind of love and acceptance that any parent should. What harm is it actually doing this kid happens to wear a dress and likes wearing dresses? I don't see any harm. And if anything, if this kid turns out to be a cissexual and is completely heterosexual, maybe this kid will be a little bit more sympathetic toward women. And who knows, maybe this child will be the most awesome heterosexual man you could ever think of. And total gentleman, very strong, very caring, very loving. And be able to take care of his female partner just as any dad would dream their son-in-law would take care of their daughter. But on the other side of the coin, which could be just as likely, maybe this kid really is a girl. I mean, here in the United States, the youngest documented case of being transgendered is, there's a little girl somewhere in the United States, I believe her name is Jazz. She was featured on a Barbara Walters special on 2020 a couple of years ago. I think she was about 5 or 6 years old, when she got her diagnosis as being transgendered. And actually, specifically in the country of Germany, the youngest case of full SRT, sexual reassignment surgery, SSR, whatever the acronym is, was actually performed in Germany on a 13-year-old girl who's now a pop star. And this girl, because her parents were so loving and supportive, is happy and she's healthy and she's doing wonderful. I don't understand how or why you are encouraging these parents to be mean to their child, or what harm this kid cross-dressing actually does. Like I said, who knows? Maybe this is a phase for the kid, and maybe he will turn into the most happy, healthy adult you can imagine. have a heterosexual partner and have a white picket fence and whatnot. Or it could be that this child is really a girl on the inside, and she will always feel loved. She will always feel supported because her parents are going to those, what some people would view as extreme measures, to show, you know, our little one, we love you, and we support you, and we are going to be here for you no matter what. Any parent who would not do that, well, then there's something wrong with those parents. Because the last thing any child wants to feel is rejected or hated by their parents. So yeah, this is my last reply to you, Lizzard944. It just makes me really sad that you would not love and support a child, no matter what their sexual orientation or gender expression was. You know, this is not homosexuals recruiting anybody. This is homosexuals, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and our heterosexual, cissexual allies showing our support and our encouragement of this family who is doing right by this kid and who is doing right by this family. This family has millions of people around the world supporting them and saying, rock on. We wish our parents were more supportive like you guys are being, and that your child is going to grow up healthy and happy because you are being so supportive of them. If there's something wrong with being loving and supportive and nurturing to your child, well then there's something seriously fucked up with how our society views families. So again, this is my last reply to you. Feel free to leave whatever comments you like, and you know, I'm really sorry that you feel that way, person. Peace out, YouTubes.